Today we're joined by Floris, an ecom dropshipper turned brand builder with an exceptional talent for building teams and scaling stores to €1 million a month in Europe. And today we talked about how he started his e-commerce journey, how he built a team where he had nothing to do as a CEO and the team did everything for him, and his lessons from starting his first brand so you can skip the mistakes and get it right the first time. Let's get right into the episode. So hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to eCom Insider Talk. Today we're joined by Floris GDG.
GDG. The pronunciations are perfect, bro.
Okay, perfect. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
Amazing. I know you came back from the gym. Got the bicep pump.
Crazy.
Yeah. Coming after Jacob.
Yes. Jacob's a fitness guru. He actually, after Dubai, he gave. Do you remember Matthew and Andy?
Yeah,
he gave them a workout plan. They texted us like 2 weeks ago, like, oh shit, like it's working very nice. Like Matthew had like a shoulder injury, so he said like a
oh nice.
So that's pretty sick. That's pretty sick, to be honest. So for the people that don't yet know Floris, he's probably the best team builder we've ever worked with. We work with a lot of people in the e-com space, a lot of dropshippers, brand builders. He probably had the best teams ever in terms of systems, in terms of team members, processes. He had that nailed down. He's also what I would kind of proclaim him like the king of EU dropshipping. With his numbers, he was crushing it. He stopped that for going into branding, so we'll talk about that. So maybe Floris, what I think could be interesting to us and also listeners, what actually got you into ecom? Like, how did you get into all of this, doing 7 figures a month and all those crazy numbers and whatnot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like a lot of people, for me, it started at YouTube. I don't have like entrepreneurs in my surroundings, right? So I always was following the system. So I went to school and I went to college, but I always knew that I didn't want a 9-to-5 because one of my top values is freedom. So at one stage in my life, I was just like, I don't know. I think I just got like an insight where I was like, what do I actually want to do with my life, right? Instead of just following the basic path. And I just started searching on YouTube how to make money online. And I came across a video wherein he was selling a Lion's bracelet. Maybe you guys are familiar with the YouTube video. It was like a guy that like blew up. I don't remember his name, but he made it like look very easy. So I thought like, oh, that's just something I'm going to do and I'm going to scale, which of course wasn't the case. My dad was my first customer, but stick to it. And I always had like the mindset wherein I saw other guys scaling it. Back in the days, it was like a lot of like Facebook groups, right? Like everyone was active in like Facebook groups. I think like I see Twitter right now like the Facebook groups like back in the days. And just saw people killing it and always had the mindset like if they can do it, like there's a way for me to do it. I just haven't figured it out yet. And eventually that time came. And it's skills from there.
How long did it take you from actually like you figuring out I want to make money online, I want to like work on building e-com stores, to actually starting to see that like, hey, there's actually some traction here?
I think the traction came pretty soon. I think it's like 3 years ago, before like the whole dropshipping in the EU was big. I also started in the US, but like I'm not native English, and especially at that time, it was definitely like broken copywriting, just bad, just trying to figure things out. And at one point I had one like semi-winner, like the spin scrubber, but it was like break even, small profit. And at that time I spoke to someone killing it in the Netherlands. And I always thought that like the Netherlands or just like the European countries were too small. I was like, you need to do worldwide because that's where you scale, right? But he was doing big numbers. So then I started looking into, okay, like what can I actually sell in the Netherlands? And I was looking on Google Trends, and diamond painting was like trending up. And the top country was the Netherlands. And there was like one other brand in the Netherlands, selling it and killing it. So that was when I created the diamond painting store in the Netherlands, and that like crushed it like crazy.
That
So
was
yeah,
like your first big winner.
that was my first big winner. Yeah.
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 So like I know right now how people work within EU with dropshipping. They basically create general dropshipping stores. Like from what it sounds like right now, it doesn't sound like a general dropshipping store. It sounds like a niche store.
Yeah. So I started with a niche store, but yeah, I quickly realized that that was not per se where the real money was at. And that's also debatable, because if I look back, and I would have just continued with the diamond painting store, like branded it early, like I would make like a killing, and I would have like made a big exit out of that, right? Which, or where the actual money is. But I yeah, quickly realized that the more products I test with like a certain quality, the more money I'm going to make. So at that time, I switched to a general store with a business partner at that time. And I think I was one of the first in the EU, like don't quote me on that, but who was doing like the ad spy strategy, because like literally every product we tested was a winner back in those days. It was literally like, okay, ad spy, United States, sort by shares, like products with like 30, 40, 50K shares. We tested in the Netherlands and it exploded.
What year is
Yeah.
this?
I think this is, where are we at right now? I think like 2 years ago, something like that, two and a half.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely good times right now after
oh, for
I was
sure.
14.5 and VAT and dropshipping. It was a larger hit. So those were like the gold. That was the golden age
Yeah.
for the
Oh,
strategy.
it was, bro. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So like one of the things, like me and Jacob were talking about this as well. We see a lot of like one thing we found that's interesting. A lot of people who are in the US who are doing dropshipping, branding, whatnot. One thing we've noticed, the people who are in US, they're very good at being kind of like these human unicorns, meaning they have a lot of skill sets. They can run ads themselves, create creatives themselves, write copy, do everything. The biggest difference I've seen between European guys and US guys, Europeans typically start to think about team building and they have better and bigger teams than the people we've seen in the US. That's what I've seen specifically with a lot of dropshippers. So for you, kind of like when was the point when you actually started to focus on building teams and kind of like scaling that side of your business? Because obviously, like right now, you mentioned that like in 2 years ago, that diamond store, that basically the painting store, it took off, and then how soon after, or maybe like what pushed you into building teams? Was it just like you realizing you need to leverage other people's talent? Like, did it happen naturally, or did you kind of like fall back into scaling teams, building teams?
Yeah. So I realized it very quickly, also due to my business partner, who's like a bit older, and he's had like businesses before that business. For me, it was like my first business, but he had already run businesses before that. So he also like really made me realize that like team building is like key, especially if you want to scale up quickly. Like it's a must. So at that time, we chose to do a mentorship from Alex Sharfen. I don't know if you guys know him. He is like
Tell me about him.
okay, yeah, he's like a US team building guy, and I actually don't know how big he is right now, but at that time, he was like one of the biggest. Like for example, Alex Hormozy, I'm sure like a lot of people listening to this know him, was one of his top students, and yeah, we did his mentorship. We also went to Texas, went to like the masterminds there, and I think that's where I got like, yeah, really like an insight in like how to build a team and how to structure it. And then together with my COO, right, with Bernardine, yeah, we perfectionized and optimized that. And yeah, that led me to, well, the 10 million in sales that I did. And I think at one point, like 35 people in the team.
Yeah. Just to give context to the listeners who don't know much about Floris's team, long story short, when you actually think of people talking about like imagine yourself not, working much in your business and having a team that like works while you sleep, Flores basically had pretty much a team built around him like that. He had an amazing COO, which is definitely a conversation I want to talk about. A very important hire, which I think is it's very difficult as well. And he had systems built out. The team was working. If there was an issue, the issue was taken care of. Products were being tested. Stores were being built, which is like a high level of efficiency within the business. So maybe like what happened and how did you go from working and building everything yourself to actually finding the first hires? Like, yeah, and maybe like more specifically, who was your first hire and how did you build from there?
So my very first hire was for my diamond painting store, but it like was like even before Alex Scharf, and so it was like terrible hire. Someone from like a Facebook group, because I needed someone for the customer support. Like I just couldn't handle it anymore. So yeah, it was just like I was like overloaded, and then I just hired someone for the CS. But for the general store, actually after Alex Scharf, and yeah, I mean, and that's of course like a very logical route to take, is always like start with the CS, right? Because that's well the least money producing activity. So I can't really remember what it was, but I'm guessing it was the CS. But the thing is like, and that's what I really got out of that mentorship, was like a base framework. So like how to hire, how to onboard, and then just like how to manage. And I think these are like crucial skills, especially like the how to hire and the how to onboard. I mean, manage as well, but I think the how to hire and how to onboard is what a lot of people like don't know how to do or don't take the time for. And yeah, that's what I saw made a very big difference in hiring like key A players.
Yeah. So did you start with hiring the management, or did you start like obviously you mentioned customer support, but when it came to media buying, did you start with maybe like hiring the managers? Let's say, for example, marketing manager, director of marketing, whatever who might be. Then you build the team around them, or was it the other way around?
Yes, it was actually the other way around, and that's an interesting topic to think about, right? Like, hey, what's the best way to hire? Like, do you want to hire the managers or the other way around? How I see it, most of the times the managers cost more money, right? And especially with drop shipping, I think it's very good to well really consider like the kind of people you need, because with drop shipping, you what I've also experienced, like my team was quite expensive, and it was very good, but it was also quite expensive. And when I look at like other people who hire mostly like in the Philippines, like maybe their quality of output is a bit less, but their costs are like half, like one third. And I think with drop shipping, because it's going like this, right? It's good to really consider how much you want to spend on a team. Like quality is always important, but I think if I look back in my team, I hired a bit. Yeah, I spent too much on my team, especially where we had months wherein just products wouldn't hit, or I needed to change a strategy. Like it's a huge cost that you have every month. So yeah, I think like hiring managers is always good. And that's also like if you look at like a normal business, like a brand or something, like that's the way to go, right? Like hire people that just take the manager role, and they will do the hires themselves, like who they want in their team to really take the responsibility of their section of the business. But I did it the other way around. But I always did look for people that had that hunger, and that I saw like at some point in the business take on a manager or a leadership role.
Maybe like to kind of touch upon like a point you mentioned, like for us it was also the same way. When we started hiring, we basically started hiring like basically the dirty workers that did all the dirty work, and then only afterwards we did hire the managers. And honestly, I have thought about like the same thing, what makes more sense. I think it can be better to hire managers first, but when you're starting up and you don't have any experience, when you haven't like worked with like high level talent, I think it definitely makes more sense to start off with the lower level players and then build everything out from that point on. But like one thing I'm curious about, like obviously we're in the agency space, like the team structure, the core positions, it's very much different from like an e-commerce business. So like what are the core positions that you think every e-commerce business should have? Obviously a CS manager, but is there anything else?
Yeah. So, yeah, to touch upon what you were saying, Rainis, earlier, wherein you saw like the US or the US guys more are like a jack of all trades, right? And the EU guys are more like team building. I think it makes a lot of sense looking at the model. Like each person is running, right? I don't really know a lot about US, but I'm guessing like a lot of like finding products, making like unique angles, like separating from the competition. And in the EU, it's literally like modeling, how Jem is saying it always very nicely, modeling, borrowing. That was
Borrowing,
the word.
yes.
Borrowing. Borrowing the products from the US and then bringing them to the EU and just like scaling them and then just doing that in masses, right? So how our team structure was is like we had like of course, a CS side, wherein we had like different countries. So we were live in the Netherlands, in Germany, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, like a lot of the European countries. We chose to do the language in the customer's native language. So we had CS for Finland, we had CS for Sweden. Looking back, I think it's better to do a Filipino with DeepL, because DeepL is like quite accurate and it saves a lot of cost, like a lot, because like Swedish, Finnish people, like they're expensive. So looking back, maybe I would have done that different, but we had like CS manager. Then under that, we had team leads. We had, I think, like at 1.2 or 3 team leads. And under that were like the CS people. And well, why we had these team leads in between was because, well, we couldn't have like all the CS people reporting to one manager, right? Like the manager would get overloaded. So it was like, I think like 5 people to one team lead and then the team lead to the CS manager. And so that was the CS side of the business. We had a supply chain, especially when we were doing clothing. Like clothing was a nightmare, like with the sizes, like crazy. We were doing like, I think we test like 10, 20 products a day with clothing. And we had like a whole supply chain that was like checking like the sizes, like, is it matching? How is it looking on the website? And also a quality check process for like the quality of the clothes with our supplier, Henry. Like if anyone needs a supplier, like Henry is your go-to guy, that on the side. But we had a supply chain team, so a supply chain manager and at 1.2 supply chain associates. Then we had a finance, also like very important.
Sorry to interrupt. So just to go back to the supply chain side, the associates, they would be the people who would actually like receive the products, I'm assuming, and check the quality themselves and report that to the manager, or like what were the responsibilities?
So we did it with pictures. We didn't do it with like actually like receiving the physical product, because that would take too long. And in the drop shipping space, especially in the EU, it's like just fast, right? You need to be on top of shit. So we did it with like Henry, like I've been using him for like 2 years. He just made pictures of the clothing and he was like, oh, it's good quality, or this is a little bit bad. Because the factories you can't trust, right? They just want to sell. And we have the relationship with Henry, wherein we know like he's real and he wants the best for us. And of course also for his business, because otherwise it would also affect his business. So yeah, we did it with photos.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so to continue the topic, so finance, and I think that's like very important, and like what a lot of dropshippers don't have. Like a lot are just like a little bit like this, or they have like a profit and loss sheet every day, just like, oh, this is like some like a summary of the profit, right? Which is often not really accurate with like all the fees that you have. So I highly recommend everyone getting a finance person, and we just found like a killer in the Philippines, which is like €5 an hour or something. And she did like our whole finance. Also like accounting, like I hate accounting, like from the bottom of my heart. So in Holland, you have to file accounting, as in like a lot of like EU countries, except Dubai, which is not an EU country, but anyways. So she was also sending the invoices to my accountant in Holland. So I just didn't have to deal with that. And then we also had the operations side. And the operations side, we had an operations manager. Then we had 2 process managers. And then we had, we had 2 processes. We used Asana. And in one process team, we had a video editor, a copywriter, store manager, what else? Product researcher. Yeah, I think that sums it up. It's quite a time ago, so
yeah.
I do have to go back a bit. I think that's the overview of how our team was looking. Yeah. And of course,
interesting.
COO.
Maybe then like a last quick follow-up question in terms of that, like obviously we're the CEO of the company. So what were your day-to-day activities? Like were you managing the team, checking with the CEO, or like how were you managing all of that?
Yeah, so I was actually not doing much physically. So my COO was doing everything, and I just talked to my COO, especially in regards to new ideas or new strategies. But that's the thing, and that's also why, like, a lot of people ask me, like, why did you quit, right? Like you had the team, like you had everything, like it was running. Why did you quit? But the thing with dropshipping is because the space is evolving so quickly, you always need to put mental capacity in the dropshipping to be on top of the new trends, be on top of new strategies, because like things break all the time. And at one point, I was just fed up with that. I was just fed up with like constantly like bringing mental capacity to the dropshipping space while I really wanted to go into branding, which again, like looking back, that's also like I have a lot of advice for people that are dropshipping and want to go into branding, because I made like quite some mistakes there. But looking back, cash flow business, like I should have kept the dropshipping, build the brand on the side, and then when the brand was like really like profitable, like continue with that. But at that time, I didn't. I just was like, I would just want to focus on my brand. I was just fed up with dropshipping. So yeah.
Okay, good to hear. I think we can go on to the next point.
I think talking about branding is going to be an interesting topic. But before that, I think I wanted to talk a bit more about teams. One last topic I have is talking about the COO, because to be fair, it's probably one of the hardest hires I've heard from people. And I remember in Geek Out Dubai, we were talking about it. And you shared a story on how you actually found Bernardine and how you started working with her. So I think that could be valuable for people here to hear. Again, from the time of working with Floris, while Bernardine was working with him on the dropshipping side. We were almost never communicating with Floris directly, which is, as a business owner, what you kind of want. You want to be out of the business, work on the high level stuff and like see how to improve it, while I have people within the business working on operations, day-to-day growth, so on and so forth. So then, Floris, maybe can you tell us, how did you actually how did you actually find Bernardine? And secondly, like you mentioned, you got pretty lucky with her. So maybe like, what are your tips for finding COOs? And if you needed to do it again, how would you do it? And your option wasn't to choose Bernardine again.
Sure. Yeah. So to start with your first question, how did I find her? So it was at a time wherein I was doing like the CEO and the COO role myself. And it's interesting because as like an entrepreneur, like you can't be both. Like it's very rare, like I never say like can't, right? Because maybe there are like a few exceptions, but in general, like you are or a CEO or you are a COO. And a COO is like really like operational, like taking care of the business, like loving like structure, loving like the managing role. And the CEO is like the visionary, right? And oftentimes the CEO is like in regards to structure and organizing, he's a mess, which I am. And the CEO is like very organized. And that's like when I before I started with Bernardine, I was doing both roles, and like I am not organized. So I mean, the team was pretty okay because I had the right frameworks and I was managing them pretty well, but a lot of things in the business weren't okay, weren't organized. And I had like one of my biggest months at that time. Oh no, my biggest month actually at that time. I hit like my first 7-figure month, and I was fed up with my supplier. I had like a supplier, and he wasn't like shipping on time, and he couldn't like handle the demand, and it was just a mess. And I was talking to another supplier, and that supplier was like, he was a very good talker, I would say. He was like, yeah, like we can like take everything over, like no worries, we'll be fine. So at one day I was just like in my emotion, right? I was just like, fuck it, like fuck this supplier. I'm just switching everything over to this supplier. So I did that. Wow, like that was like a shit show. So yeah, like orders weren't fulfilled for like 20, 30 days, like orders were being missed. Like it was horrible. So I also lost like the next month, I lost like, I think like 300K or something in the minus. Yeah, it was very bad, which again, like taught me a very valuable lesson. But at that time, when I was just like overloaded, like what's going on? Like, how can I fix this? Like, I was just so overwhelmed. I got in touch with a guy that helps to scale businesses, especially ecom businesses, because he knew and he saw that a lot of the ecom guys were like visionaries and not per se team builders. So that's like where he stepped in. So yeah, I talked to him, and he brought in, they call it like an ABM, I believe, which was like a business manager. So they bring like someone into your business that's functioning like a COO, kind of role, wherein they're running most of the business and you're taking on the CEO role. And that was Bernardine. So at first she came from the agency, we worked together. Then between her and them, things didn't work out. So that's when I like brought her in full, just for me, like under me on the payroll.
Yeah. As far as I remember, you mentioned that her previous experience was not in the e-commerce field. It wasn't even like retail. It was the oil industry.
Yeah, oil and gas. Yeah, she worked at a very big company in oil and gas. So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from her in regards to, well, also team building and just more the corporate route, right? And I can also say like my business was quite corporate. And she learned a lot from me in the whole ecom space. Like, yeah, we are still like in touch like quite often, and she has like a few like ecom gigs, and yeah, she's loving it. But yeah, like her knowledge about ecom started with me. So that's also where I had to teach her a lot.
Yeah. So what was the training process like? How did you get her adapted from a completely different industry in a very complicated role to e-commerce to the point where she was actually able to take care of the business?
Yeah, I just threw her in the deep. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's
a
what
good
she
talent,
loves.
basically.
Yeah, she loves a challenge. Like
Gotcha.
she just loves problems. She loves a challenge. She loves solving.
So it goes back to kind of like finding an A player.
Exactly. Yeah. And she like took on the responsibility. And of course I was there to support her, and I was there to help her and to guide her. But yeah, it was just really like, hey, like fix it, like put your knowledge on these problems. And that's how she learned. And yeah, that comes down to indeed like finding the A player. Like it's good to have someone with already experience, because especially like what you actually want is you want to hire people smarter than you in like a certain area of your business, right? Which was with her. I mean, it was the case for like team building wise, but ecom wise, it wasn't. But yeah, she just really took on the responsibility to like learn it and to fix everything. And that's how she just developed herself.
If you run an e-commerce store and you're looking to generate more revenue with email and SMS marketing, go to agencyjr.com/call to book in a free call with us. That's agency, J as in Jacob, R as in Reynes.com/call. And let's talk to see if and how we can help. So now you are you're working on, your brand and another project, which I won't reveal yet. If you had to hire for these projects again another COO, and you cannot choose Bernardine, what would be your process like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, for a brand, I think you can hire in the beginning, but it's a cost, and that's also why, like looking back, like I just like quit cold turkey with dropshipping. Well, I quit, I exited it, right, which we'll talk about later. But I still had the team, and I think it was like in total, I brought a few people with me. I brought my finance person, I brought my supply chain manager, and I brought Bernardine. But it was like the start of a brand. So there wasn't really a lot needed, right? Like I didn't need a supply chain manager. It's like literally just talking to like a few suppliers, picking the best one, just getting samples. Same for finance. Like it was not needed. And at the end, unfortunately, also with Bernardine, wherein it was just like, yeah, there's not a lot of work. So for a brand, I wouldn't suggest already hiring a COO in the beginning. I would do that when you actually get traction. And of course, as advised, as I said earlier, which we probably go deeper on later, is that you don't just want to go solely to a brand because it's slower, but more on that later. But if I would do it for dropshipping, that's what I do with every role, is first making a 4R document. And I'm sure you guys have heard this multiple times, which is like a role, responsibility, requirements, and expected results all in like one document. And we make it for every position. And with that, it is one for you, very clear, like who you're searching for. And it's very clear, what the role of the person is going to be, but also for the person, right? Like it comes across one, very professional, but also for them, it's very clear what their role, their responsibilities are. So that's how I would start. And just like throw it on Upwork, throw it on online jobs. I mean, there are like killer Filipino people. I had one coaching student that hired like Filipino COO and like killed it. Like it's a killer. So I think it comes down to having a very good hiring and especially hiring process, knowing who you want to look for, and also knowing the traits of a COO. So that's also what we did in our hiring, is we let the people do a personality test. We actually let them do the Tony Robbins DISC profile test, where you can see like, hey, what are the traits? And if I look at Bernardine, she's a very high D, like she's fucking like 98 or 99 D. It's like very like strong, if I would say it like that. And I'm sure Rhinus and Jacob, you know what I'm talking about. She can be intense. She can be intense. So I think it's just that, like knowing like what kind of person a good COO is. I would say a D, because it's like very like what's the word, like taking on the responsibility, just like very proactive.
Yes.
And, I think that combined with like just a good hiring process, you will find a good one. But again, it is very hard, because like all the entrepreneurs like are visionaries, and there are just like very few COOs, or you pay like a premium, because normally like COOs in the US, you pay like 10, 15K a month, I believe, is like the base salary. So
by the way, to go back to the DISC test for the people that might not have used it, DISC stands for basically D is dominance, I is influence, C is compliance, and S is steadiness. I've done the test. Me and Jacob, we did the test when we were in Alex Becker's Iron Group. I know I did it. I don't know if you did it. I think you did, probably a while back. But it was interesting. I don't know results. I want to redo it again. I haven't done it in a while.
You should.
Yeah.
I say that to every entrepreneur. Like, it's so important for you to do the DISC profile test, as well as the 16 personalities.
Yeah.
But also for your team. But like as an entrepreneur, you need to know who you are, right? Like being like self-aware, knowing what your qualities are. Like that's one of the most important things in business. and like, yeah, you will come to like shocking revolutions, I would say. Like when I did my it's interesting, my disc profit test like changed over time. First, I wasn't a high D, I was a high E. Or sorry, I was a high
I.
I always like switch these up. I was a high I, but that changed over time to me being more D, with also having a high I, which makes sense because you're a business owner and you're developing those skills. But 16 personalities, like when I read my results, I was like stunned, because like my biggest downfall for my whole life, where like that made me lose a lot of money and made me make a lot of mistakes, was literally like on paper, like, oh, this is like, by the way, this is your biggest how do you say, your worst
Weakness.
yeah, your worst habit.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Interesting. Talking about on the topic of kind of like we dove a bit more into dropshipping to branding. I think it's a very interesting topic because right now we see a lot of people who are doing dropshipping either in the EU or the US go into building brands, building something more long-term, something more sustainable. So for you, what would be your advice for someone who's switching from dropshipping into branding?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of advice regarding that because I made a lot of mistakes. I think I did like everything wrong that you can do wrong. Yeah, so first one is always have a cash flow business on the side. So if I look back, yeah, like honestly, like at that time that I like quit dropshipping, like it's good that I did, because I really get to see the value and like feel the value of money again, because I lost it. Like I lost it completely, wherein I just didn't care about money. I was just like spending left and right. Yeah, I just didn't have a healthy relationship with money, and I really fixed that, because well, I've barely had any cash flow for, what is it, past 7 months, I believe. Yeah, 7-8 months. So that really like starts eating on your mindset, which is very interesting because you really get to know yourself. So yeah, I think first advice I would give is always have a cash flow business. So start your brand on the side of the dropshipping, because like brand is slow. There are a few people that immediately make a killing with the brand, because it is possible, especially if you brand like a winner you have with dropshipping and do it the right way. But a lot of the times, like it's very slow. I've spoken to quite some people that went from dropshipping to branding, and they all went back to dropshipping again because they just couldn't make it work and they couldn't switch their mindset. And that is something I also really had to do, because especially if you, well, yeah, like you have a certain identity, right? Like we all have a certain identity, and well, my identity was like being a successful dropshipper. As you were saying, right? It's like, yeah, you're saying like what, like one of the biggest in the EU, like that's how people see me, which isn't per se the case, because there are bigger people for sure, but that's how I'm perceived. And that's also something you will take on in your identity. So for me, I really had to switch that, because suddenly I didn't dropship anymore. My brand was slow. I needed to like, yeah, figure things out. It's like a lot of testing, a lot of tweaking. So yeah, that's interesting. And that's my first lesson, I would say. So do a brand on the side. And then when your brand is bringing consistent revenue, then you can maybe choose on like quitting dropshipping, exiting it, like bringing some of that team over to your brands, etc. Then second one is I wanted to do it too perfect, my brand. Like the brand's looking, if I may say so myself, the brand's looking like this, like the branding is on point, like the photos, like it's beautiful. But people people of course care, but you first need traction. Like the most important thing is just like seeing, like validate the product, like product market fit, like look for angles. And then when you found that with like a basic branding, then you can actually like invest more into branding, invest more in website. And that's something I spent too much money on that in the beginning, as well as with stock, because my mindset came from a dropshipping mindset, wherein I was like, scale. Okay, this product we launch. Okay, we scaled the next day. So I bought like quite some stock because I was like, yeah, like we'll scale this easy. Which wasn't the case because the ads weren't hitting. So yeah, I think that's also a lesson that I learned, like just like first validate, and it's not bad to when you have a big team or you're a very successful dropshipper, when you go to brands, to also just do a few things yourself. Like if you have a product, ship it to yourself, make your own ads, make your own TikToks. It's you're like, and that's just something I really had to switch my mindset in because I was like, no, that's like not worth my time. But branding is such a different ball game, and it's just something you really have to learn again. So yeah, I strongly suggest and strongly advise people to, when they start a brand, just like doing stuff themselves and just figuring it out, and not spend money left and right on like agencies and like let them make creatives, and just like start figuring stuff out yourself and then build from there. Or I mean, you can, if you have like a very healthy cash flow, of course, you can also reinvest that in like creatives and in like just having people do it. But yeah, it will be like way more cost efficient, and you will learn way more.
Sounds like you weren't happy with the creatives you got.
No, bro. They didn't perform.
Okay, so Jacob, before that, I want to quickly recap just so we have that. So basically, first key mistake you saw like first lesson is have a cash flow business because branding takes longer. Then before you order a lot of stock and commit to a specific brand, test out product market fit. With the product market fit, do you think it makes sense to start dropshipping the product at first, or just order very little stock and see if you have an angle that hits or not?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it works both. I mean, if you're dropshipping anyways, how I see it is you can validate it, like, because you're borrowing, right? So you borrow creatives, whatever. If that hits, like just start ordering the product and create creatives yourself. I have friends that started dropshipping for their brand, but that was also like more early, right? Like it was like 3 years ago that they started dropshipping with the brand and then turned it into a brand with stock. I'm not sure how that would work right now because people are way more aware of like just whole dropshipping. And I don't really know if it will harm your branding. I would suggest just like ordering very small stock, creating creatives yourself, and just starting like with angles and just start testing out different things. Yeah. If you already have the brand, and just because you also want some branding on it, right?
Yeah.
Because you do already want some customer experience. At least that's how I'm seeing it. So stock with like very basic branding. And
so cash flow business, product market fit with very little stocks and branding. Be ready to do stuff yourself, get down, get dirty to actually figure out the creatives and like really commit to making it work. Pretty much. Okay, makes sense.
Good. Like one thing I'm super curious about, like after talking to a lot of dropshippers, it seems like every dropshipper has a different definition of what a brand is, of what branding is. So in your case, like how would you define a brand? Like what does branding mean to you? Is it basically just taking a random product, putting your logo on it, or buying stock, or building a community? Like what is a brand to you?
For me, a brand all comes down to like customer experience, like optimizing the customer experience and just building a relationship with your customer. And I think that's where there's a big difference between dropshipping and the brand. And well, looking at like the lead times, right? Like, if you have a lead time of 3 weeks, that's not the best way to start building a relationship with your customer. It's definitely possible, but it's not the best way to start it. So I think like for me, branding means getting stock, just very, very small stock, creating your own content, putting like your own unique branding on it. And in the beginning, that can be very, very basic, and then like optimizing it from there, all based on looking at like customer experience.
So do you know the actual definition of branding?
Like, I've read it somewhere. I can't.
So So like we had in our school we had a guy from the US who was teaching politics and whatnot. And branding actually means like in farming, you would basically take these metal letters or numbers and you would, heat them up and like put them against a cow, and it's branded. So like if, for example, a cow runs away and if someone else finds it, they can see from the branding, I don't know, it was from the McDonald's farm or something
Yeah.
like that. So that was pretty interesting. But to go back, like Jacob, like what you mentioned, like yeah, everyone sees it differently. And we were
Interesting.
talking with one guy from France. For him, branding is like creating your own custom product with, you're
Mhm.
gonna have stock, you're gonna have that. Like for them, instead of just taking a product that exists and like putting a logo on it, which is more like private labeling, it's creating your own product so people can't copy you.
That's interesting. That's also because I started with that actually. Like I started like my branding journey started with like custom formulating my own acne product because I used to have like very bad health, very bad acne, and I saw like a unique angle that I could take in the current acne space. But it's interesting. Like I also like asked for advice in like Adlix Platinum for the people that know it in regards to like, hey, like what would you guys advise for me going from drop shipping to branding? And someone like very knowledgeable in the space there mentioned that he saw a lot of drop shippers go from like drop shipping to creating their own product. And he said that's not optimal. At that time, I didn't want to listen because I was like, this is like it. But like it's hard to like create like your own custom formulation, figure everything out, like all the things out. You need to get like a high MOQ because it's like all custom formula, because so the risk is also much higher. And especially if you come from like that's like from my personal experience with like my mindset, wherein I had like a drop shipping mindset, which is just very like quick, it can be like detrimental. And that's also something that he said in his post, wherein yeah, he saw a lot of like dropship guys go to like completely like customized branding, and it then didn't like, and it then not working, right? So I think you should like personally, you should always like create like just test it, like a test, like product market fit. So also if you want to create something custom, I don't know if the French guy already like tested that before he created like the actual custom product. But yeah, just test it in some kind of way. Um, but yeah, so to answer that or to touch upon that, like I started that route, but I eventually like was just like, yeah, this is not the right way of going. And also the branding guys I knew just like private labeled something and then iterated from there, right? Like then optimized the product or created like a different product and just built out the brand from that private label product.
Yeah, that's interesting. It does make sense because like with branding, if you're dropshipping is very, very quick. Branding takes more time, more effort to get that built up. So then maybe from you as an entrepreneur, what were some of the new skills, maybe mindset shifts or character traits that you needed to learn to actually do branding more successfully?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I think especially since I quit cold turkey, right? It's just like patience. Definitely the mindset, just like doing things for the long term, like always. If I look back, like, and that's also why I quit dropshipping, because I just didn't see a long term in it, and that just didn't make me happy because I was doing it for the short term cash. I was actually just reading a Twitter post about it where someone said like, oh, when my stores are doing great and I have great sales, like I'm very happy and like I'm looking forward to working, but when it's down, I'm not, and I have a shit day and I don't feel good. And that really indicates to me that he's having a short-term mindset wherein it's all based on earning money. And then, of course, when you attach your happiness to the money, yeah, then when you don't make a lot of money or you lose money, like you feel like shit. So I think that's the mindset shift I had to make, is like really like just doing things for the long term. And that's like every business I'm going into, like I don't want to do it for the short term anymore, because I know that doesn't fulfill me and it doesn't make me happy. So that's one thing I had to switch. And yeah, I think besides that, it's just like patience. Like if your brand doesn't work out, which is normal, if it doesn't hit immediately, like it doesn't mean that it's not working. You just need to tweak. And that's what I've seen from friends of mine who at first like just didn't like or weren't able to make a product like work that they branded, but they like tweaked it and optimized the product page, optimized the funnel, optimized the price, optimized the ads, and now they're killing it. And yeah, they're just making like very good revenue, very good profit. So yeah, I think those are
Yeah, creative is king. Like in Geek Out as well, everyone was talking about like, even for example, if your brand is doing 10 million a year, the reason why you're not at 100 million and your competitors are is because they probably produce more creative than you, and they push out, the volume is higher, and with that, their team could be better built around producing creative, around creating different angles. This is something that I saw from like dropshipping in the early days to after like iOS 14.5. I was talking to Shaq as well with this. We were on Clubhouse. And at that time, I was in Alex Becker's Iron Group. And in there, he talks about scaling info products, scaling courses and whatnot. And the biggest thing about YouTube ads specifically is your targeting doesn't matter as much as the creative. I knew guys who literally had recorded 100 ads until one ad hit, and they scaled it for 6 months straight. But like before that, nothing is working. And it's such an interesting shift. Like you just rearrange the alphabet in a very specific way. It sells. If you maybe like miss a few words or maybe like look at it from a different angle, the market does not click. And I believe like right now with Facebook and most advertising platforms, it's going more and more in that direction, where like you're targeting, like everyone's going #broad. So like create, like really being able to produce the creative, come up with different angles, and consistently test and consistently push out new content. That truly is the big key.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree. And that's also when, yeah, what I said earlier about like it's not bad to order project yourself and get your hands dirty and create creative like yourself, because you just need to understand the whole creative game. That's the most important thing in this business right now. It's just having good creatives. And if you can get your hands dirty and test yourself, like you will learn so much about how to create the creatives, how it will be for the creators that you or your team are managing, because you rather do it in-house than like getting an agency cost-wise. So yeah. How is that for email, by the way? Because I mean, email.
In what regard?
Like for paid ads, it's like creatives. Like, what would you say for email is like most important? Would you say copywriting?
Yeah, I mean, emails. You have the two main parts of the email. One is copy, the other is design, and it's kind of like, I'd say I'd rather have better copy and shittier design than great design and bad copy, because copy goes back to also the brand's voice, you being able to sell and convince people they need the product, and yeah, I'd say copy probably is the most important thing, because you get a lot of emails. There was, for example, one example of Nick Shackelford. He shared like this one SMS that used the William Smith slap meme. Like with the angle, like, yeah, we slapped 15% off our product, stuff like that. Like you being able to catch attention, it's gonna come from text most of the time. We also on Twitter, I posted one tweet that actually came from Jacob's idea, where like we created an email that was completely ugly design. It looked like it was created on Paint, but the copy was like, hey, our designers, like, hey, our designers on a break, but we still had to like push out promotion. Sincerely, those who aren't, on the holiday. And it's like a very, very badly drawn email. It looks like it was created on Paint, but it did decently for the brands. It wasn't like a huge hitter, but it's still something that if you open it, it catches your attention, and it helps you convert. And like you need typically design stems from copy. You have the copywriters and account managers who work on creating, like coming up with the different ideas, and based off of that, the designer kind of like executes upon the design. So I'd say copy probably is the key of emails. And also, I mean, Jacob will probably want to touch upon this more, segmentation as well. So kind of like segmentation, copy, that those things go together, and you build around those.
I for the most part agree. Like for me, like the general opinion would be slightly different. Because emails for the most part, it's not like the emails don't create your brand identity. Emails basically just follow your brand identity. So there isn't a lot of things you can do, a lot of best practices you can implement. If your brand is very visual, of course, in that case, the emails also have to be visual, even though, let's say, more text-based email will perform better. So it's hard to say because emails usually just emulate what the brand is, even though something else might work a bit better. But for me, I would say maybe it's closer to 50-50, in my opinion, between graphics and copy. But there is like no real way to prove that. And yeah, but
Yeah.
definitely.
And it also vastly depends on the brand, because for some brands they care more about branding and design rather than the copy. So then they're not open to new ideas. Whereas others they're open to do anything that's crazy. So it also really goes back to that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So all right. So far, I think for us, we've covered the main topics we wanted to talk about. There was the dropshipping exit we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Floris very happy about it, so I think we can talk about that.
Yeah, Jacob, take away. Ask your questions. I know. We talked about it. So yeah, long story short, you exited the dropshipping store. Tell us like what happened. What was the process? I know you didn't go the traditional way per se.
No. Yeah. So for me, as I said, at that time, I was just like done with dropshipping. I just didn't want to spend mental capacity on like the business, the dropshipping business, and just want to focus on the brand. So the only down part is like I had a team of 30 people, and all these people had families, and all these people were depending on me. So I'm just not someone that just like pulls the plug when like I don't really feel like it anymore, right? So I've held on to the business for quite some time, and just like figuring out like, okay, what can I do with the team? Like, can I make an exit? Can I get this team to someone else? And yeah, at one time there came an opportunity for me wherein a friend took over like the whole team, including everyone, and just ran the business with them. So yeah, that was my main focus. For me, it wasn't like about like making a big exit in regards to money, because my stores weren't worth anything, right? It was just like left and right a new store. Oh, Facebook ban, new store. So it was really the team where the value was in, and yeah, that's how that went.
Yeah. So if it's not a secret, like what was kind of the structure that you exited upon on? Was it just like you? I know that you mentioned that you still kept like equity or rev share in the company, a profit share. But like how was that structured? Like, did you get paid a certain amount, and then it was like you still being kind of like as a consultant in a way on a minority stake?
Yeah, so it was a profit share. It wasn't like a flat fee. It was just a profit share, and not me being involved, because that's like the whole point. I just didn't want to be involved anymore. So it was just profit share.
Yeah,
and
so
I'm
pretty
like,
much sold the team.
yeah,
In a way.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. So then, what did you like? If you had to do the exit again, would you do something differently, or like what would you change? Maybe.
Um, Yeah, I think I would, because it was just an opportunity that came by. Because it's not something that, yeah, people will easily do, wherein they will take over your team that have, like, I think at that time it was like 30-40K monthly cost, which is quite something to just take over. So I would, because it was just an opportunity at that time. In the end, like, I didn't get a lot out of it, unfortunately. But yeah, just how things go. Yeah. It's different, of course, than how people make normal exits. I don't think people can get a lot out of this, to be like, in regards to value. Because of course, like, exiting like an ecom, like an actual brand, like,
Yeah,
a
it's
whole
different.
different process, and then you actually you build the brand in most cases. And that's what I'm doing, like, for the exit.
Yes.
So yeah, then it's a whole different process.
Yeah, to be fair, I think you could have gotten like a decent multiple because your team structure was so good, and that there might have been maybe other companies who either want to get into EU, or private equity companies that are looking for talent. And then I think it could have been like there could have been opportunities where you find the right people, because even for us, we have one side of the team that we're not focused on that much. And to be fair, like, also to us, like, something interesting happened as well. Like, we were on a call with another entrepreneur. They want to get into email marketing. They're kind of like targeting the audience who this part of the team was managing. And right now we're having a conversation of selling that to them. So I think it's a lot of like having the right timing and finding the right people. Obviously, like in your case, it was an interesting exit. It's not something that's too traditional. But I mean, it's a completely different ball game. Your friend Chris Pine, he probably knows a lot more than this one. That he's kind of like in the private equity space and acquisition space. So yeah. Maybe one last thing I wanted to ask about was, after you did exit, you talked about how for a long time you weren't making any money. I know we had a conversation about it as well. Like, you kind of like mentioned it. You feel like there's some sort of a void, like you felt lost. Um, so can you maybe tell us a bit more about that? What did that teach you? Like, what was something that you saw that you didn't see when you had the business going, when you were, working on
What do you mean,
improving that?
Saul?
Saw,
Yeah.
like what was something different you saw within your life, and be some reflections, some lessons that you learned from that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just comes down to, like, being a man. Like, you need a purpose, right, in your life. Like, that's where like, men get their happiness from, like, having goals, like crushing goals, like having like a bigger purpose in the world. And at that time, yeah, and that was also tied in with dropshipping. Of course, I already had that, because I was like, yeah, I was just thinking short term. I was just thinking money. And when I spent that money easily and it didn't really mean much to me, it was just a really unhealthy situation I was in. But then when I quit that, and I indeed didn't have a lot of income, and I of course did have outcomes, yeah, it was really like what the fuck am I gonna do in my life, right? And yeah, I think it just, well, first of all, taught me a lot about myself, and just in specific, like, the relationship I had with money. Because I really believe, like, everything happens for a reason, even like bad stuff or bad decisions. Like, yeah, when people ask me, like, what would you have done different, like, I would have done, like, if I look back, a lot of things different. But then I wouldn't have the lessons that I have now. And, well, one of the lessons is, well, the relationship with money, which at that time I didn't have, and I have right now. Like, I really, like, worked on that, and like read books about it, like watched videos about it, just like listened how other people look at that, and then just reflected that on myself. And if I would not have gotten these lessons, like, maybe I would have continued dropshipping, and I would have made like 2 million in profit. I would have lost all of that 2 million. Like, I'm very convinced in that, because I just didn't have the right frameworks. So yeah, I think that was for me just my biggest, that was one very big lesson. Second biggest lesson is always like being open to learning, and to like other people, their opinions. And that also came down to like, well, in Europe, quite some people like put me on the pedestal, right? Wherein like, oh, it's like the biggest drop shipper, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, just the same as like you're a pretty girl, right? Like your whole life you hear like, oh, you're so beautiful, and you'll subconsciously like start acting like that. So with that came that I wasn't always open to advice or to new things from people, and it was, if I look back, pretty close-minded, because I was also like, if I ask this person, if I ask him how he does this, I lose my authority a bit, right? And that was something that's always, or that was, yeah, that was also quite detrimental, I would say, in my learnings, because yeah, I wasn't really how do you say? I wasn't really like learning the game anymore. And I think that's something you should always keep, and you should always keep learning, and you should always be I was a student of the game, right? That was the saying I was looking for. So yeah, I think that was also something I really realized that I wasn't doing the right way. So yeah, I just had a few of these like very helpful insights, because I had more time to process and to digest what all happened and to reflect.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely is interesting. I know with the third, sorry, with the last lesson you mentioned, it's something that kind of like resonated with me as well, because sometimes it's like there are people that ask me advice, in certain areas, and then I remember I was thinking like, if you're seen, for example, like for us, me and Jake, like if we're seen as the email guys and we ask
Yeah.
advice about email marketing to someone, it seems kind of like accumulating in some ways. But then again, it's like it's your ego. No one really cares.
Mm.
Like from on the outside, no one really cares. It's like other people know more than you in certain areas. Like there might be another, for example, email marketer. He uses tactics we don't know about, and we can learn from him. So you always got to be able to keep an open mind, which can be challenging sometimes. But again, it comes back like what you mentioned at the start of the podcast: self-awareness. If you can understand that, catch that in your own actions, you can fix it and
Yeah.
change it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, that's just like so key. Like that's so key. And yeah, some like it's good that you guys like realize that. Some people maybe have to go through it, like learn it the harder way, right? Because for me, like I lost like a lot of money, but I did learn the lesson, which I can use again for the future. So yeah, I think those are, but indeed what you're saying, like it's your ego. And I think yeah, that is definitely something that I tamed a bit. So,
Yeah.
and I've never just to clarify that, I'm never like really like a big ego guy. Like I'm always like, how I would
No,
say it.
Floris, you have been. You've always humbling you.
Yeah.
I'm just putting this out there.
Uh,
No. It's for legal purposes. Don't sue me, Floris. It's a joke.
all right, now you're done, Ryan. You'll get my lawyer after you. No, but
Okay.
yeah, like just to touch about a bit more on that. Yeah, I think not that if I look back, not that I was like very, that I didn't want to connect with people, because I am always like a very like connecting human, and I see like value in everyone. But it was more of like things, yeah, how I was seeing myself, I would say. That
Right.
makes sense.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right. I've enjoyed this podcast episode. It's been very, very exciting. Um, yeah, if people are, if someone, definitely there are going to be people who are listening to this point. Floris, how can people find you? How can people maybe ask you questions or connect with you?
Yeah, I think definitely on Instagram, Floris GDG, as well as on Twitter recently. Ryan is forced me to go on Twitter, so right now I'm also on Twitter. Now I like, I love Twitter. I'm not
It's
really,
great.
I would say, not really active on there. I'm just more at this point. I'm just more digesting knowledge because there's so much knowledge there. So yeah, not really putting out knowledge as of now. Maybe later, because Ryan is going to teach me some tricks, some Twitter tricks. But yeah, I would say just Instagram. Yeah, that's my place.
Perfect. Really appreciate you coming out to this episode.
Before
Floris.
we
Yes.
round it up, I think a lot of people watching this on YouTube will have a question. Even though you were like 32 years old, a lot of people were really wondering, like, how do you manage to stay so young? So what are your top 3 tips?
What, 32?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
32.
Is this a joke right now? I hope it is, right?
No, you're 32.
Okay.
You're not?
Yes,
You're not?
I mean, when I wear my white tank top, sometimes I can feel like 32. Maybe edit like the photo in.
Okay, video editor.
Next topic.
Please,
Next
please,
topic.
remind me to send you that photo.
We'll see.
My 3 tips to stay young.
Yeah, it's been a
Dutch.
pleasure having you here.
Jacob just trying to push away the topic, and that's fine.
Yeah, now you're getting it. Jacob.
It backfired.
No,
It backfired.
I'm getting it. All right, no skincare tips from Floris. Keep it a secret. All good.
Yeah,
All good.
yeah,
It's his
my
acne
secret.
it's his acne product. That's what it is.
Not released yet. Still in the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, only at your house, like
Yeah.
your Walter
My
White.
samples.
Yeah, cooking up in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for hopping on, Floris. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listeners for listening. Check out Floris GDG on Instagram, Twitter, on Grindr as well. Find him.
Definitely. Please send me a heart. I would love to connect there.
Yes. So all right, thank you so much for hopping on. Hope you have a great day and peace out. If you thought this episode was valuable, share with a friend that might find this information useful and leave a 5-star review so we can reach more influential people and bring lessons back to you. Now, I'll see you in the next episode.